Everybody, this is Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel, bringing you a program which is devoted to painting and drawing from life. I bring in objects and fruits and vegetables, but today I brought in a very special live subject matter, and that's a human being called Laura Hampton. I'm always very grateful when somebody says, yes, I'll come and pose for you, because working from life has been what I've been after now for, well, 12 years on the television programs, not working from photographs or other people's paintings or out of my head. I want to work from life. Here she is. Laura Hampton, welcome.
Thank you.
It's going to just be very easy. It's virtually painless, but I'm going to talk to you and probably appear terribly inquisitive. But that's to keep you from getting bored to death, and also not to have a glassy stare, which is many times what you find in portraiture, is the glassy stare because the sitter has either been nailed to the chair and has not been talked to. So I like to talk to people, and I'm sure that we won't divulge any deep, dark secrets. But you see, I must also point out that it's almost not fair for me to have picked somebody as beautiful as you are, because, oh, well, all right, she looks up at the sky and says, oh, God, okay. Anyway, portraiture is a very complex thing. You have to try and get the person to it, rather than just the features. So you have to sort of know somebody beforehand, and if you don't, then you're kind of guessing. But anyway, the point is resemblance with portraiture. And we're going to try to make this resemble you in a very short space of time. So I'm laying this out on a blank canvas, which I have tinted gray because it messes up the electronics of the television. And I've begun, while we were tuning up and so on, I've begun to just sort of make the placement of this on the canvas. And as I'm going to talk about this, the fact that you have such remarkable hair, I'm going to unfortunately have to leave some of it out, but the hair is going to be a very important part of this portrait. I think any portrait painter that takes one look at you says, oh, it's, you know, besides the beautiful blue eyes and all that stuff, there is a remarkable head of hair, known in the Gibson girl days as her crowning glory, as you know. So anyway, this is the thing to be concerned with, and of course, if you don't do the hair right, you've kind of lost the whole anatomy of this portrait. So when I do your hair, I'm going to be talking about it, not to make you self-conscious, but to get people to understand what kind of texture we're dealing with. So I'm going to lay out just the face. I'm using just white on this canvas, and then I'll switch a little bit later to some darker tones, and then try to make this as simple as possible, because portraits, when they're complicated, tend to lose the resemblance. You've got to keep a face as simple as possible in portraiture, because one thing to remember is that portraits are walked by every day in somebody's home, and they have to be pleasant to see every day they go. You wouldn't have an enormously wide open smile nor a very vivacious expression, because you're going to be passing that portrait every day, and if it doesn't have a serene quality to it, possibly the people who look at it will say, okay, stop smiling all the time. Anyway, let me ask you something, Laura. You are a college person.
Yes.
Good. Where?
Farmingdale.
Okay. And you are aiming for some kind of a degree, obviously.
Yes.
Well, what kind?
Advertising art and design.
Good for you. I thought that you were going to, I thought somewhere along the line you were going to be teaching advertising art.
Yes.
But you're going to be, so advertising art is the main goal.
Well, hopefully I want to combine art and education together.
Good for you. We don't have enough of that. So, you graduate when?
Next year.
Next year,
Yeah.
1991.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that you get a bachelor's?
Associates.
Associate, okay. And then?
And then I look for work.
Okay, are you going to look in the school system?
Yeah.
You have some qualms about getting out into the commercial art field?
Yeah, I don't like business.
Ah! Well, you know what? You're probably right. So, all right. Well, I'm placing the eyes now, and there's if you know anything about drawing and painting, which I'm sure you do because you want to be into that business, you know that proportion is one of the most important things. And if you don't have the proportion,
And you don't have any.
you don't have anything. Whether that goes for architecture or the human face, or even the simple thing of being a cartographer. If you don't have the proportion, you could have England as big as the Soviet Union, and you could have Texas as big as Rhode Island if you don't have any idea of proportion. And so laying this out is the idea of to get proportion before anything happens. So the placement of the eyes, of course, is important, and I think that I'm really playing around with fire here, trying to do this in a short space of time, because that's one of the most difficult things to do. But we're going to try and simplify this for my general audience. A serene and not a blank smile, but a very demure smile is probably the best. We've learned that from Da Vinci himself with his famous Gioconda, because that famous smile, I think, is the aim of all portrait painters, to get that enigmatic, and I hate that word enigmatic smile, but anyway, to get what I call a serene smile and a pleasant and intelligent expression. Of course, you can't help having either one of those because they're there naturally. Anyway, now I'm going to change a little bit to a darker tone and see whether or not that's of any use at all in this instructional program, and see whether or not it's absolutely needed. So I'm just going to do it for the benefit of my audience, to show them how I go about this, because this is, after all, supposed to be an instructional program rather than just an entertainment. So the laying out is done with this tinted turpentine brush. It's a brush called a liner brush. Bought in any art store that's got a decent brush supply, and it's very flexible, red sable hairs, which are very pliable. I think anybody who sees this brush can see that I'm using it almost as a pencil. Which I don't like charcoal. Charcoal makes a terrible mess, and most people who use charcoal call me up and say, I use charcoal and I get gray skin tone. Well, it's because the paint picks up the charcoal. So I use this turpentine. By the time I'm ready to paint, the turpentine has dried enough so that it's actually almost like pencil. So the other remarkable feature about you is these heavy and unplucked brows. Thank goodness.
I have my mother to thank for that.
Oh, good for her. Your mother is probably got the best thing going, because I'm sure that if you have been looking at any of the photographs of well-known beauties, the minute that they pluck the eyebrows, in my opinion, it's a shot. All right, now Laura, tell me about what kind of art you like, as long as I can engage you in conversation.
Finger painting.
That's good.
Probably oil painting. I haven't had any experience in it, but
okay.
Looks.
Do you do drawing? Do you draw at all?
Yeah.
And you draw sort of on a daily basis?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's rare. Okay. I'm going to start putting some color in here because time is flying by, and here is my palette. Which is nothing more than another piece of canvas board, such as I have up here. And here's my great puddle of white, which is something that you cannot do without, and that's why you buy it in pound tubes. And this is a stuff called Maragé medium, which is a vehicle very much like, well, it's what I use instead of linseed oil. Linseed oil is absolutely an aberration in my opinion, and so I use this Maragé medium. It's expensive, but it goes a long, long way. You use it very, very thin. And I'm using a kind of a basic skin tone here, which I'm going to start applying right away. You have, the lighting in here is sort of adequate. I'm afraid that it's, if I had you in a studio, I would have you in daylight, which makes a difference. We're going to just work as best we can with this studio lighting. And that's why I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm using a base coat, which I have mixed here. There is white. There is something that Grumbacher calls flesh tone, which is a sort of a dumb name because all flesh on human beings is not pink. So I have questioned that for many years. How does any paint company think that they can put out a tube of pink paint and call it flesh tone? Anyway, but it's a basic wonderful color because it's got all the violets and the blues and the pinks that I need in it for mixing with other tones. I'm using it very thin, as you probably can see. You can't see, but the audience can see that I'm using this very thin because this is nothing more than a very fast demonstration how you go about this business of portraiture. Now, I believe that I have got this layout. The one eye is correct, and the other eye has got to be the corner of the eye. I'm using a point of reference is vertical from the break of the nostril. These are important things because people say, I don't know where to put anything. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to, and when I make a mistake, it's not because I'm trying to cover up, it's because I find that sometimes mistakes are very good instructional tools. If you make a mistake, then you can find out how to correct it. So if the corner of your eye is directly vertical to the side of, to where the nostril is, those are the points that I have chosen as my reference points. Of course, I've lost the drawing of the nose by now because I'm blocking this all in. But I'm going to, I just have to show the people how I go about this, because painting portraits is not the same as drawing portraits. Painting them means that you have to start with a ground and work up from the ground. With a pencil drawing, it is merely line. So we're dealing, there is a florid kind of pink tone here which can be put in immediately, and the paint is wet, and therefore it's going to blend in a very cooperative way. The bloom of youth, of course, is obvious on your cheeks at this time. Maybe it's also the winter winds.
Or the light.
Or the heat of the light. Well, let's call it the bloom of youth as well as the winter winds. But when you lay something out and you put the ground in, you have virtually lost a little bit of the drawing. So I'm going to go back to that with my liner brush, which is right here, as you can see, and I'm going to try to replace the nose. It comes, see, attempting to talk all the time while I'm doing this is almost a fool's errand, because concentration means that you don't talk your head off. By the way, when you work at your college work, do you have the radio on at all times?
No.
You know why? Because you can't concentrate when there's noise. And what I'm doing right now is making noise by talking. However, I can't have dead air, so I must keep talking and telling people what I'm doing. But I'm placing the nose to put my instruction where my mouth is, to tell you that the side of your nostril being here, as I am drawing it, and now I'm going to go vertically up to find the corner of the eye. I believe that that's why painters do this. They hold up the brush to try and get some idea of the vertical. Yeah, it is in fact, the corner of the eye is here at the, where the nostril comes out, and therefore this is all wrong. So I'm going to take that out, block this out with some of this pale tone, and show you how to replace the eye. Actually, there should be courses taken on how to correct mistakes because they are vital. We all do them, and so the replacing of this eye is the important thing. All right. Now let me. I was talking about hair. Let me just very quickly blot. The top lip is of course always darker than the bottom one. Guess why?
Because light.
Because it's in shadow. That's right, because it's in shadow. So when you are dealing in a very quick rendering of a portrait, you remember that you're dealing also with light and shade, and hence even no matter how subtle it is, it must be paid attention to. Otherwise, things aren't going to stick out like they're supposed to. And I get calls sometimes when I do portraits on my live program from little voices that say, "I don't know how to make the noses stick out." Well, that's done by light and shade. That's the whole magic of this kind of endeavor, is to play with the lights and the darks, and because we live on a planet that has light and dark, and the separation of the mouth is very important, because this is where the subtlety of the smile is going to come. And I find that there's a lot of reflection. Let me pull this forward. Yeah, well, we're dealing with oil paints. They get wet, can't help it. That's the problem. So we're going to have to deal with that. I'm going to break for a few moments because the programming is done that way. So let's break for just a second, and we'll come right back. Don't go anywhere. We still haven't finished. So I'll be back in a moment. Guess why?
Because light.
Because it's in shadow. The reader that takes one look at you says, "Oh, it's, besides the beautiful blue eyes and all that stuff, there is a remarkable head of hair." You are a college person.
Yes.
Good. Where?
Birmingham.
Okay. Tell me about what kind of art you like, as long as I can engage you in conversation.
Finger painting.
That's good.
Probably oil painting. I haven't had any experience in it, but
okay. Just say, I don't know where to put anything. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to, and when I make a mistake, it's not because I'm trying to cover up, it's because I find that sometimes mistakes are or the heat of the life. Well, let's call it the bloom of youth as well as the winter winds. That's as big as Rhode Island, if you don't have any idea of proportion. And so laying this out is I do portraits on my live program from the little voices that say, "I don't know how to make the noses stick out." Well, that's done by light and shade. Here we are back again with Laura Hampton, my sitter for the night. And this session is a portrait session that is not only trying to get the resemblance of the face, but also to do a concentrated effort to paint hair. I've had many requests from people who say, "How do you do hair?" Well, thought I'd try and do it, and I kind of cheated, because I've gotten the most beautiful head of hair in the world to pose for me. That's a very modest statement. It's the most beautiful head of hair in the world, Laura. And of course, the face is quite passable. Let me talk about this. I've got a basic painting done here. I'm not going to attempt the hair. This is going to have to be done in 2 sessions, I believe. And this is the first session of our portrait session is face. Second one will be hair. And so the face is, of course, the part that houses the hair. And without it, then it would be just an ad in a beauty parlor. So this is a portrait, hopefully done in a very short period of time, and paying attention to things which a lot of people may be intimidated by. Namely, I've got a shadow falling down on your face here from the above lights, and that's fine. Maybe it's not the kind of shadow that I would choose if you were in my studio, but it is nevertheless a shadow that is all part of the resemblance of this painting of you, Laura, and we must pay attention to what we see, because I'm working from life. When you work from life, you have to remember one thing: don't question what you see, just go ahead and do it. And that's the difference between working from life and working from just your imagination, is that you you really probably cannot guess on all of these things. If I were working from imagination doing your portrait, I would never imagine that this side shadow of the nose was the way it is. And so when people say it's too complicated and I can't do it because I'm too scared, it is easier to work from life than it is to flounder around in your memory bank, which fails you most of the time because we do not have perfect recall. When you smile, there is a slight indication of what happens to the cheek when you smile. It's not a totally blank area of flesh here. There is a cheek, but it has to be very, very subtle, because this you have many, many years before you find out that this is the line which you're going to wish you didn't have. Well, we all learn to live with that. So with wisdom comes also patience. Anyway, building the face is one of the major problems with portrait painting, but it's also one of the incredibly fascinating challenges that one must have. The painter is not a painter until he has learned to paint the human face and the human form, because there is no formula. Everybody, every single one of us, just like fingerprints, it is different. And so when you have something which is never repeated, there is where the fascination lies. Also, if it weren't for the portrait painters, we would have absolutely no idea of what Napoleon looked like. If we didn't have portraits, there are just the father of our country. We wouldn't have any idea what good old George looked like if it hadn't been for the portrait painters. The camera was not yet with us, and so on down through history. So we benefit by the camera, but we also lose something with the advent of the camera. We lose how to look at things, and we lose how to look at people. The camera does it all so quickly, but there is something human about painting a portrait from life, whereby you get a light in the eye which is not always there when you do the camera work. I'm going to now jump for a moment into the eyes, which are, well, I would say if I had to put a color name to the eyes, they're cobalt. I think they're cobalt blue. There are many different shades of blue eyes, but these are cobalt, I think. I'm using ultramarine blue and a touch of manganese, which is what probably I would be asked by people. What color blue are you using? And needless to say, the blue doesn't come out of a tube. The iris of the eye is actually not a black circle, but it's a hole into the head, which means that it is extremely black. It's the one time that I do, in fact, use black, because we're dealing with a space. It's a black space in which there's no light on the other end. Therefore, it is extremely black, and that's to be remembered. The light in the eye, of course, is the thing that gives it its mystery. The light in the eye here in the studio, in one eye there are two lights, and in one there's only one. So you see, there's the mystery, and that's the advantage of working from life. There is one right up here under the lid, and I cannot question why, because I know that the lid has shadow, but nevertheless they're very peculiar. And then there's another one right here. And then on the other eye, there's only one, and that's in another place. So the complexity of the way this studio is lit is what we're dealing with. Of course, the whites of the eyes are not white. Look up a moment. There you are. There are two. See, I want these people to see the two. No, look at me.
Okay.
Good. There are the two lights right there on the monitor, and there's the single one on the other side. An object lesson in how you work from life. Oh, I love doing that because it always makes me so right. I have a complex about wanting to be always right. Okay, we're placing the eye and giving the eye a house in which to live. The eye lives in a place. It is also extremely subtle what happens, because this is a sphere that is set inside a cavity, and all of these things cast shadows. Underneath this eye, even though you're extremely young, there is a very dark shadow on this eye, but it's not going to give you any appearance of age. It's going to give the appearance of where this eye is sitting inside a cavity. Later on, and I've done portraits of people who are younger than you and older, and the shadows under the eyes are one of the most important things. Of course, the expression in the eye is very important, but the shadow under here tells me, guess what? How big your eyes are. The shadow under here tells me how big they are. Not the opening, but the shadow. I hope that none of this is too boring to the people, but it's observations which I have made because of the manner in which I work. As I said before, we're going to have to concentrate a little bit on the structure of this face. Eyelashes are something to be careful of. You have a lot of wonderful eyelashes, but they are not to be made a point of because we're not doing a Maybelline ad. We're doing a portrait, and you don't minimize them, but you don't do them in such a way as that it actually looks as though you're doing a piece of commercial art. So I am merely going to indicate the eyelashes here with little slight indications. And if you ever do look at portraits of, let's see some of the great portrait painters. There are no lashes. There are virtually no lashes, which makes the difference between some of these, I hate to use the word schlock portraits, but so somehow that word comes to me, that the use of eyelashes to make a woman beautiful is absolutely absurd. So we're not going to do that. And I can barely see them. So the minute you have to strain to see anything, it's obvious that it should not be obviously done. The corner of the eye is an important part. It is got a pink tone because that's where a lot of concentration of color is in the corner of the eye here, not being too informed on the sciences of why the eye is red down here. It's probably an accumulation of blood, I suppose. But the white in the eye is rarely white. There is almost never is there white in the eye. Now, I've got to talk to you a little bit. We haven't got too much longer to come. Will you come back and post me again with your hair? Sure. Wonderful. So why don't we just continue with this, with the building of this eye. There are also some wonderful, very mysterious eyelashes on the lower lid, which not many people are gifted with, but you have been gifted with lashes on the lower lid, which is not fair. Anyway, we'll forgive you for that. And the program, which is sometimes some people wonder when this takes place. Well, it takes place at 7:30 p.m. live on Tuesday. The last Tuesday of every month is live. Otherwise, it's Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, and 10:30 p.m. on Fridays. So if you have some curious friends who've been wondering what you were doing with the last half hour, you can tell them to tune in and see what happens. You will gain instant fame, of course, and the world will be at your feet asking for your services as a beauty. But, well, take that in your stride, Laura. Thanks for coming. I'll see you the next time. Good. Listen, everybody, this is going to be done again to finish the hair. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it, and I think that you were probably charmed out of your wits by Laura Hampton. Thank you, and tune in the next time. Bye-bye.